Hello, Shawna. Welcome. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I would love to have this opportunity to tell you a little about myself. I am at a place and a phase in my life where I feel so deeply grateful and blessed. Like many of our readers who may have gone through a fierce awakening or are feeling like one is on the horizon, I've been through my own. In fact, I feel like I've been through more than one. So let's start with where I'm at. I am currently living in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. I am self-employed. I have my own business that I've recently started, and I called it Burkholder Enterprise because I have a vision for myself where it's going to grow more than where I'm at this starting point. So I really believe in having that opportunity to vision and dream big. And so at the moment, though, I am living with my sweetheart and his daughter, and my work and my calling into the world is to assist women who feel that they're at a crossroads. One of my programs I call is Journey to Wholeness, because I think that there's sometimes, as women specifically, and I know that this happens a little with men too, is we feel that there might be something missing in our life or that there's more out there. At least that was so true for me. And we also, I think, because of our nature and how we are socialized, we give ourselves to others. We give ourselves to doing what our parents expect us to do, what our husbands need us to do, what our children, it's our calling to serve them and raise them into good human beings. And we sometimes lose sight of who are we. So that's who I am right now. I am that woman, that guide that helps other people along their path on their journey so that they can have those awakenings. And as I'm sure we'll talk about, won't necessarily have to be quite as dramatic as the one that I went through.
Well, I was just going to say, would you like, that's a perfect lead in because yours was quite a dramatic awakening in some ways. Would you
Yeah.
just tell us a little bit about, without giving the book away, but tell us a little bit about, yeah, what you went through because it is pretty extraordinary and how you
Yeah.
came out also.
Exactly. So for me, like I mentioned, I think there's many awakening moments, and I'm going to start with the premise that for many of us, whether it's source or God, universe, we get messages, it's intuition, however we receive them. And they may start as, I call it a little tickle, like, hey, pay attention. And then it's like, yoo-hoo. And then if you're not really paying attention, it's wham. So I'm sure I had lots of little callings along the way that had gotten off path for my purpose. So it took a wham moment for me to wake up and go, I don't like my life. I don't like who I am. I don't know who I am. And so the background for this is I was 49 years old, coming up on my 50th birthday. And I wasn't afraid of it. I actually was so looking forward to it. I thought, wow, if I think about it, there's longevity in my family. My grandmother at this point in time is 98 years old. And I'm thinking, I could make it to 100. So I'm like 50-50, right? And I was like, well, I want the next 50 to be better and more exciting than where I've come up, because we're learning and we're discovering ourselves. And I'm like, I want this to be great. So this is January when I've made this declaration, and my birthday's in the fall. Sometimes you have to watch what you wish for because I got change. Boy, did I get change. So it was early in the year. It was March, actually, when a couple of things I was going to say coincided. That's not a good word for it. They collided for me. And that was my grandmother, who I mentioned at that point in time had been in hospice care. So we knew she was coming near the end of her life. I also worked for a nonprofit, which was one of the largest in the area. And my role with that nonprofit was to be the fundraiser. And we were involved in a collaborative fundraiser, which was um, designed to bring in over $3.5 million. So there's a lot and 1,000 guests. I mean, this is a huge gala auction, you name it. It had everything, right? So on the very morning of this big fundraiser, which I'd been working for 9 months to make sure all of the details were covered, Grandma passes away, and I get the call at 6, 7 in the morning, "You need to come and say your goodbyes." So I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to be with my grandmother, but at the same time, I needed to go into what I call compartmentalizing, where it's like, "Okay, I did what I needed to do. Now I had to, like, do a 180 and turn my attention to work." And that, of course, was a long, stressful day. Um, that was kind of like a domino. That was the first domino that ticked. And then the second was like this awakening that this relationship I was in for 18 years wasn't really growing or supporting me. And I just got to the point where I knew that as much as I had claimed in January that I was going to make the next 50 years of my life exciting, I I realized that I was at a point of closure, and blossoming into a whole new life that I hadn't planned on. So I'm gonna leave it there as a little bit of a cliffhanger because there's lots more details in the book.
Well, and that's true because there are really precise and really amazing details of how you went through this. But one of the lines that I loved in your essay was about coming from this lowest common denominator, right? And how living at the lowest common denominator is really unfulfilling. Would you like to, tell us a little bit about what you mean by that and how you kind of saw yourself coming off, this, I'm going to go out and live the best 50 next years of my life in this amazing way, and then realizing, well, I'm not really quite doing that yet.
I'd love to. Um, know where the term lowest common denominator came to me to describe my life, but it did. And I think for me, it was this substitute for saying I settled. Which sometimes settling in some areas you could see it as compromise. And I realized specifically in my personal love relationship that compromise often meant giving up what I wanted, giving up what was special to me. So I use this example a lot because it happened all the time. I mean, we've been together for 18 years, and there was still a lot of mutual respect and love, but also a bit of being strangers because I think I was on this path of growth and he was in a path of, but there's security and safety and everything staying the same. And that shift in values was not working well for us. So it wasn't unusual. It'd be the end of the work week, and I'm like, I want to go do something. I want to do something fun. Let's go out to dinner, and I'd always do a little research. Like if it was winter, I found like 3 restaurants that inside of the restaurants they have fireplaces. Wouldn't that be romantic, right? I mean, I'd be creative. It was just an outlet. And I wanted to, and then we'd go back and forth. I'd propose the idea, but rather than saying no, I don't feel like it, it's like, well, I'm kind of not in the mood for that. How about if we go to our go get Thai food? That sounds good. I love Thai. Okay, let's go. Well, but where do we want to go? Well, let's go to this one that's too far away. Okay. Well, how about this one that's closer? Oh, we've been there and done that. It was like every single time and this was just an example of what happened with so many aspects of our life. I'd be like, let's raise the bar. Let's try something new. Let's add a little excitement, romance, so that our relationship is growing and we're growing together. It was like, not quite. Let's bring it down a notch. And then I'd say, okay, I can come down a little. Well, let's get. And it was like, in the end, it's like, okay, let's sit in front of the TV and watch replays of Seinfeld and have cold pizza. I and yeah, I can handle that on occasion, but I realize this is the pattern of our relationship. This is not feeding my needs, my soul needs, my physical needs, my love needs, my communication needs, my growth needs. And we had quite a few conversations about, you know, what do you want to do? And then again, that's where I found this pattern where my identity was morphing into serving people at the exclusion of what was true for me or what my needs were. And I'm all willing to do some compromise, and that's how I learned more about sports and other things that wouldn't have been high on my list, but I was willing to do that. That was something that grew me and was a compromise that I felt made us stronger. But when I realized it was one-sided and we kept going to that lowest common denominator, there was nowhere to go.
But you ended up going somewhere.
Well, that's
Um,
true.
Yeah. So where did you go from that lowest common denominator when after
Oh,
grandma passed away? And take us a little bit on that journey that made you
yeah.
realize that you didn't have to stay in that compromised place.
Yeah. So it was an interesting place to be because as I mentioned, it was March when grandma passed away and work was a priority and it was all about work. So I will also confess at the time I was a workaholic, which did not help nurture my relationship. And I think that's one of the reasons why when I wanted to do something that engaged us, I wanted to give it 110% because I knew that I wasn't around all the time with my work demands. And I was grieving in an uh, well, every way is conventional. Every way is a unique way to grieve. But I realized my grieving I had kind of pushed down. And I had this awakening that my work wasn't what I wanted to be. I was a little, let's say, maybe depressed. And so, because that's part of grief, right? We kind of go into this dark place. And I started realizing my work is not fulfilling me like I thought it was. This was the wake up call that seeing my grandmother pass away and recognizing I have mortality too. And what do I want to be doing with my life? And I sadly was coming slowly to the realization that this relationship I'm not sure it's fixable. It may not be working for me. And I thought and avoided so long having the conversation that said, I think we're at the end, because I didn't know how that was going to land. I didn't know if it was going to be like, yeah, I'm so glad you said it because it same here or what, I mean, I just that fear of the unknown and then the what ifs, what would happen next? We had 18 years together, and of course, not all bad. We made it that far. What would be next? So that was the next kind of awakening was I'd reached that point. I had this knowing that it wasn't getting better, and I didn't have trust or confidence that it would because I'd been coming at it from so many different angles for improvement, so that I just needed to sit down and say, this is where I'm at. I did some pre-work with myself. I did some intention setting and I recognized that I'd heard, and we, not just me, have heard so many stories about relationships that end can be so bitter and contentious and, all those negative things that you just rip each other apart. And I thought, not me, not us. I'm not going to allow that. So we sat down and I said, it's not working. I still have love for you, but what I feel our next step is to, I said, deconstruct the container of our relationship because the container was living together and having that relationship and raising a child. I said the container needs to change. The love can still be there, but the container can change. And my intention is to come through this with grace and respect and fairness where we can, but with the understanding it's done. And so that happened in May. So it took me about 60 to 90 days to go from grandma's passing to get to actually closing another, or that was another domino. Let's call it that, right? Another domino fell. So we did that. And then there's the next piece was the container. Part of the container was the house that we lived in. And so I had to make that decision. So the house was in my name and made the decision that I needed to sell the house. And that opened up a lot of doors. Well, what's next? Buy another house, go rent someplace, go do something. But I also had made a decision before that happened. Boy, they just came. Then the dominoes start falling, bing, 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 faster. I love that visual, right? Um, because I was also not satisfied with my job, and I realized I never did get my bereavement leave. That's part of the policy. And as I was going through other personal challenges, I didn't have the capacity to do the demands of the job and my personal life. So I quit my job. That one was easier. That one didn't take me 2 months. That one took me like a week, and it was like I just walked in and I said, "I love you all. I'm willing to stay for my 2 to 3 weeks," 'cause I didn't wanna leave them hanging high and dry, but I was done. So here I am. I have no job. I pretty soon, I won't have the relationship, and we've decided I need to sell the house. So what do I do? I mean, really, what do I do? And my first instinct was safety, right? And security. And it was put the money in the bank, hoard it, hang on to it, and go find a new job. You're going to need income. I mean, what are you going to do if you have no income? Go find a place to rent so that you can scope out the options for buying another house, because all of those things meant security for me. Um, and then somehow, again, a little tickle, a little tap, a little whack said, don't go that route. You don't know who you are. You feel like something is missing. Remember January when you said you wanted the second half of your life to be different and better? You need to answer that question for yourself. What is that? So that's kind of where that middle part of the story goes.
And I think we're going to leave it there so that people can read about it, because your choices
Yeah.
after that are really quite
Yes.
fascinating, right? And just to say a little bit, you went outwards to find yourself inwards, right? So
Exactly. I use the phrase, I went on a journey to find myself. And for a while, there was this question in my head. Because I also was a believer that one of the reasons I was a workaholic is because busyness keeps us to avoid really assessing our lives. And things aren't wrong because I'm not paying any attention to it, type of a thing. So I was keeping and I knew this, I was keeping myself busy so that I didn't have to deal with those internal pieces. And when I went on my journey, which was part of my fierce awakening, I wondered, am I running away or am I running toward? That was a huge question I needed to answer for myself. And I think I'm not the only one that deals with that.
no, I think we're all in that question, are you running towards or are you running away? Right. And sometimes you're not even running. You're just taking the next likely step and it leads you here. Right. And then it's like, oh, well,
Exactly.
where does it go? But
Yeah.
as you as you went on your journey, as you're coming back into this place now and looking back from where you've been and where you are now, what would you say are 5 qualities that it took you, or that it will take us generally, to take the next step on the spiral path?
5 qualities. Um, it's funny because I'm thinking, oh, 3 pop right into my head. It's like I might have to struggle for the others, but here are the qualities that came up that I learned through my fierce awakening that other women may also experience, and these are labels, so they may just use a different label. First was I learned, these are the I statements, that I am enough. I didn't need anything or anybody else to make me a whole person because I went searching for wholeness, right? I am enough. The other thing is I am worthy. And I realized that's why I was compromising so much. I was compromising away my life because I don't know, I wouldn't have never said I didn't think I was worthy, but I think that's how it was manifesting. So I am enough. I am worthy. I trust. So I trust the bigger universe. I trust that's for many people, they use the word faith. I have faith, but I also had to learn to trust myself. I didn't I didn't trust myself. So when I heard those inner callings, those little nibblings, the little tickles like, hey, this doesn't feel right, or you want to go do this and try something new, I didn't trust it. So those are the 3 that immediately come to mind. 2 other qualities is I want to use the word fearlessness, but I'm not sure if that fearlessness, courage, bravery, right? They're all kind of in the same thing and they'll resonate differently. I was not fearless. I will say right out of the gate, I was afraid. And many people said to me, "Oh, you're so brave to go out and do what you're doing," or "Man, it really takes a lot of courage." And at the time, I'm thinking, it takes a little bit of stupidity. No, but again, I was learning to listen to my intuition and trust myself. So, however you want to label it, I think that those things are a little bit related. So, I'm going to leave it to that. I am enough. I am worthy. I trust in myself and a higher source, and bravery, courageousness.
Yeah, it's true. There, the fearlessness, it's almost a little bit like foolhardiness, you know? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I totally can feel that. And yeah, thank you for that. Those are really good words.
yeah.
Now, say after me.
Okay.
Dear reader, if there's one thing you get out of my story, I hope it's
Dear reader, if there's one thing that I hope you get out of my story, I hope it's that you know you are enough and you are worthy of whatever your heart calling is. There is no question about that. It is a truth. The second thing I want you to get out of this is trust yourself and take positive action. Move through the fear that something bad will come from it, because staying hidden, staying small will not serve you. And you don't want to live a life of regret. You don't want to be on your deathbed and looking back and say, I wish I would have. And you can fill in the blank because you know what you're being called to do. And sometimes it's that wish maybe I wish I hadn't, I wish I hadn't stayed for the job. I wish I hadn't gotten into a workaholic pattern. That was not something I wanted to go to my deathbed saying I did. So that's what I want you to get from my personal fierce awakening, is that you are worthy, trust your instincts, and have no regrets.
any last thoughts, feelings, sensations, counsel, guidance
Yes.
for, yeah, encouraging the readers to take the next step. Any parting words?
Yeah. So the parting words I have for the readers of the Fierce Awakenings book, the beautiful thing is you're going to be able to read a number of different stories, and they will land differently for you and resonate differently. But I want you to have that takeaway. However, the awakening happens for you, it's authentic and it's meant to be. Each one of our journeys is unique. And my way had kind of a dramatic tipping point, which is, I think, why I was drawn to the term fierce awakening. But I also realized there were lots of moments of small awakenings. It was kind of like coming out of fog and waking up to what was possible in my life. So please read each of these stories, feel the truth in each of these stories, and then hear what is calling you and have the strength to move forward with your own fierce awakening.